to bring this webinar to you. In this session, we have a very valuable panelists, a group of panelists who are extremely versatile in the field of HR. And joining with us, we have Mr. Chintaka Premaratna. He is a Group Director, Human Resources for Fairway Holdings Private Limited, along with Ms. Imani Pereira. She's the Head of Learning and Development for John Keells Group. Mr. Isuru Tilakavardhana, the Deputy General Manager, Human Resource Management of Commercial Bank, Ceylon PLC. And today's moderator is, of course, Mr. Manjula De Silva, the CEO of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, may I kindly request all of you to keep your microphones on mute and cameras off. This is due to the fact that it might disrupt the presenters while speaking. Also, if you do have any questions, please feel free to use the chat option that's available at the bottom of your screen. We will take up the questions at the end of the panel discussion during the Q&A session. Let me now hand over the discussion to Mr. Manjula. And thank you very much again for joining with us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amanda, and good morning and a warm welcome to this webinar on managing HR in the new normal, challenges and opportunities, which is hosted by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce in association with the Sunday Times Business Club. So the objective of this webinar is to examine how the way people work will change as we recover from this COVID-19 crisis. Now, as most of you have experienced during the COVID crisis, I think a lot of people got used to working from home, following a very flexible regime, using a lot of digital devices and tools such as video conferencing and webinars, etc. And when we go out, even occasionally for a work-related purpose, we have got used to following a very relaxed dress code. So a lot of things changed during this COVID crisis. And a lot of people tend to believe that the world will change as we come out of the crisis, when we move into the post-COVID world, since this crisis has been something of a belief that it will translate in such a way that when we come out of the crisis into the post-COVID world, it will be a very different world to what we have been used to before the crisis. So a new term has also come up, which is the new normal, is what is being currently used to describe the post-COVID world. So today's objective of the webinar is to see what are the challenges and opportunities that we will face in managing HR in this new normal. So if people are going to continue to work from home, if people are going to continue to operate mostly in a digital environment, how will that change the way we work and how we are managed by our organizations? So that will be the focus. And so what we will have by way of a structure is that we will have 3 brief presentations from the 3 panelists of roughly about 10 minutes each. And after that, we will have a Q&A session. So as Amanda explained, we have a very good panel of leading HR practitioners representing 3 diverse sectors. And just to very briefly again recap, we have Chintaka Premaratna, the Group Director HR of Fairway Holdings. We also have Imani Pereira, Head of Learning and Development of the John Keells Group. Also Isuru Tilakavardhana, DGM Human Resource Management of Commercial Bank. So I think a very good panel of people with a lot of experience in the field of HR to share their thoughts. So just to start off, we will now request Chintaka to take his turn and and speak on the new normal and shift in the HR.
Thank you, Manjula. Good morning to all. Thank you, Ceylon Chamber of Commerce.
So over to you.
Can you hear me?
Breaking a little bit, but yeah, come again.
Yeah. Can you see the presentation now?
Can't see the presentation yet.
Amanda, I have shared the presentation. Now it's on share mode.
Chintaka, we will share it for you.
Okay, lovely, fantastic. So I've just, okay, so until Amanda shares the presentation, just let me do a quick intro. So once again, thank you very much, Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, for having me for this panel, and I'm honored to be part of this, session. We all know what COVID did to the world and to Sri Lanka, and what continues to pose, as well as to our businesses. Unfortunately, no one what will happen during the next 6 to 12 months. During last couple of months, saw major transformation in business processes, business dynamics, and the way we operated our businesses. In fact, we were forced to adapt new HR practices under the new normal. So this pandemic situation put HR to its best. I can say that because as HR leaders, we had to be close to the board and make certain important decisions throughout this season during the last 2 months. So quickly looking at, how did the business change for us in Sri Lanka? Next slide, please. If you take the retail sector changed the way they did business. Tourism industry shut down operations, except a few who operated, but also there were some who changed their focus totally and changed their strategy and had a new TG altogether. The banking industry had to continue with limited operations under challenges. ICT and software companies were the easiest to shift to the new working from home and remote working methodology. Most of the other corporates adopted wait and see approach. I think now we are getting back to some sort of a normalcy, but we are still observing, certain cautions and precautions. And then, of course, which affected us as parents, and also the new change in educational system. And out of all this, the positive thing which we saw was the increase and the growth in startups. So since this is a topic which has a whole plethora of subjects to cover, due to interest of time, we've discussed, and I will be covering the areas of new normal, under the new normal employment types and mind shift change. So new normal HR focus and the employment types and the mind shift change. So please understand that I'm presenting some emerging trends only, thus may not be applicable to all the businesses or industries. So moving into next subject, working from home or remote work. Well, this is something the West has adapted for a long time, but it never came to Asia because we were comfortable with the presence of our employees, face-to-face meeting, whatnot. But I think the entire world was put to test, and this was a fantastic, test bed where we had to, we were forced to start this working from home, even though we did not have proper systems, frameworks, and KPI set, as well as IT systems to monitor performances, but we were forced to adapt working from home, even restricted form, or in certain cases like the IT sector who were fully fledged working from home. Then the next point was the HR focus the shift that we saw was the salary cuts and benefits, where most of the companies went on even public to say what the salary cuts, and as a result, this changed the lifestyle of our employees. So this was a big change. And I can tell you 99.9% of the staff did not complain because they knew the issue that we had in hand. And then point 2 was the way that we did learning. Point 3, sorry, was learning development. So unlike those days where we had large training departments and big budgets for training, but now it was very eminent. Bite-sized learning was the talk of the town, and which was very popular amongst a lot of people, and that changed. So the cost of learning was minimal except the cost that you had to incur for your data. Point number 4 was a very important point where during this period, value creation of HR leaders. What I meant was, here, this is where the CEO expected and the HR leaders were put to test, where we had to develop, the HR leaders had to develop and initiate disaster recovery plans. If you did not have what was the plan, discuss and initiate that. Remote working methodologies, then mental health programs, and importantly, cost control initiatives, where we had to look at, without just keeping the right balance, keeping the motivational levels and the morale level of staff, but at the same time looking at how can we manage our cost, and focused on talent management and crisis communication, which was a very important point in terms of being very clear with your communication to your staff, because anxiety and ambiguity, and then just not having any communication can lead to a lot of issues. And finally, reskilling current resources. Now, this is the time that all the companies stop recruitment, so you did not have the option of looking at new skills. So it was important, and the companies had to spend effort and time as well as money to reskill staff, and going forward this is going to be another major area. So moving on to the next slide, quickly touch upon some of the new employment types. I would say what is emerging. So before we get to that, I think what is important is organizations identify roles for different employment types. Now we need to revisit as organization leaders, what are the jobs that we can look at, where we can assign gig workers, where we can assign part-time workers, where we can look at reassigning of workers, cross-functional teams, creating agile teams. So this is very important, because going forward, I'm sure now most of these points that I'm just referring to are research based, and you will see that the amount and the trend in which the world is heading towards this particular gig worker types, and I will talk little later on. So the organizations need to be very focused and identify these worker types. Well, I must tell you the next point, FTE will not be the normal new norm, will not be part of the new normal, because full-time employees, any organization as we go along, they will be required for different businesses, different operations, but people will question as we go along whether we require a full-time employee or not. Then point number 3, increase outsource routine tasks. Example, we have been, the traditional way of outsourcing has been predominantly towards janitorial services, security services, etc., etc. But I think that way India is a little ahead of us, where if you see the entire, I would say 90% of the HR is even outsourced. So going forward, organizations will have to look at outsourcing, to a great extent. That does not include gig economy, which I will just touch upon a little later on. But currently, what we do outsourcing will increase as we go along. Then point number 4, as I see, cross-functional teams and agile teams is going to play a major role, because I think the next slide I will not now. I will show you, what an agile team is. I'm sure all of you are aware about agile teams. Agile teams are where teams are given everything and basically every person required for a job and everything given to achieve a given task. So these teams will have their leaders and until they complete their particular assignment or task. And cross-functional teams, and whilst we carry out our current work, we can have cross-functional teams achieve certain objectives or achieve certain tasks. So I'm rushing through these points because 10 minutes is not enough to go into a lot of details, but I'll try to do justice for each point. So next point being gig talent. Now that's a new term which has come into I think to our vocabulary, business vocabulary or HR vocabulary, where gig employees are basically who will do gigs. They will be given very clear-cut objectives, KPIs, deliverable time frames, whatnot, and they will do that assignment. And they will. So the gig economy is going to grow, and this is something which has come to stay. I can assure you that, because like the outsourcing companies, there will be gig worker companies where companies can reach out to these gig worker companies and assign certain things, and they ensure based on their capabilities, and they ensure that this gig work will be completed. So this is a subject by itself. Probably if somebody is interested, I should be able to share more reading material, literature on this. And then with all the above, next is going to be the project manager.
I must ask you the question. How are you and your family? Huh?
I'm sorry, somebody's there. Okay. So next I can see the project managers who will have to manage all the above cross-functional teams. It is not the typical project managers where a particular project was managed, but here the project managers will be responsible to manage the gig talent, then the cross-functional teams, part-time workers. So ensure that different types of projects that the organizations have are managed effectively. So that includes attending to different work groups, issues, problems, grievances, end to end. So that's going to be the need of the hour as we go along. I know project management has been there, but this type of project management will be very different, where true leaders will be looked at. So just quickly running through to the agile organization slide. I picked this up from McKinsey's, where they portrayed, or the subject was about the 5 trademarks of agile organizations. You can clearly see the difference from a conventional organization or the mechanics to an agile organization where you have no boxes, lines, and only focus action items are there, quick changes, flexibility, resources. So all that is there to achieve one common. And the leadership shows here will always ensure that they get their job or task done. So to my final slide is the mindset change, where we talk about what we need to do. So new work ethics with more flexibility and trust will come into play. Ladies and gentlemen, whether you like it or not, we will have to trust our people, the future workforce. If you think that somebody is working from home, you can't be thinking whether he's going shopping or just sitting, playing with the kid. No, it's just that task based, and going forward, if we are to embrace this change, technological change, new change, the new normal, I would say, we need to be very flexible, and our policies, employee guidelines will have to be very flexible, and most importantly, the managers will have to have trust. So this is a very key shift, because this is something that Asia we still have to develop, especially working from home and remote work. Then invest on HR tech and ICT platforms and information security. So this is a key. Even when we were put to test with working from home, all of a sudden with this COVID thing, we did not know how do I assign work to my people? How do I check their work? And then what KPIs should I say? So this is the time that we need to get ourselves ready with the relevant HR tech. So performance management systems, remote performance management systems, then the ICT platforms, including information security. Point number 3, I just made it a point just to emphasize the fact that please understand, next generation will always have more than one or multiple earning sources, earning streams. So the clauses we have had, you can't have any other earnings, in our contract letters, conventional, the old contract letters will have to be re-looked at. And then importantly, the next point of realigning benefit structures. Now, I'm sure, my colleague in the panel, Isuru will touch upon the benefit structures. Going forward, we will have to relook at our benefits. Now, one of the key components will come into play is data or telecommunication benefits that we will have to offer. So, and then even looking at some of the benefits might be taken away, like, if we have had in-house doctors, now are these things that we will need any longer? So these are the things that we will have, and this is a subject by itself, realigning the benefits with under the new normal. Point number 5, leadership. During this period, we also saw some of the organizations had natural leaders. When you were put to task and put to test, and there were natural leaders. And here, I would say the new normal requires now the leaders who will have compassion, empathy, and understanding, basically building resilience in the organization and understanding. The new leaders will have to not only know the technical stuff, but managing, situations, managing people is going to be the key, because it's very, very important that the leadership will play a major role, because the key areas like the gig economy and other employment types is going to come, and you will be managing remotely. So the leader's objective is to keep a balance between the employees and motivated teams to achieve the corporate objectives. So along with that, a leader's job will also be the next point, to build individual resilience. So one of the key mindsets that we will have to start doing as organizations is to make individual resilient, to make people understand during difficult times how do they have to just keep their focus, and then how do they have to just achieve their given task, not to get disturbed. Now, new leaders, I know there were many organizations, when there were salary cuts, what they did, they spoke to their employees, helped their employees to manage their finances. I know this is a personal area, but the advice that they gave was, okay, we will give you letter templates to just to write to the banks, to ask for the moratorium, what's not. So managing that type of situations with your teams is also very important. So that's the building individual resilience will help the organizations in the future. And finally, another important point is, with all this, your office layout is going to change. Your office, you will not and you may not require big offices, but it will be the key factor that we will come into play. Of course, you will see that project management officers will be there. Basically you will have project teams. Cubicles will be will not be even asked whether you need a cubicle or not, because everybody will be on a similar platform. So you know how the EPMOs work, and how effective they are, because you can talk to each other whenever you want to have a breakout meeting. You go and have a meeting. So offices and the layouts will change. Hot desking is going to be another important point, because part-time workers, gig workers, when they have to come, where you can multiple people use the same workstation at different times. So office layout will also not only help the organization from a logistic point of view, but it will also help you from a cost efficiency point of view. So that's going to change as well. So I think overall, in terms of mindset, I just want to, within the 10 minutes, touch upon some of the key things as the business leaders and people managers, how we will have to change our thinking. So my last slide, I just want to leave you with this quote which says, individual skills training, agility in teams, and leadership integrity are the 3 pillars of organizational resilience. Weave them into your life of your organization now, and they will see you through the next new normal and the one that will follow. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Chintaka. I think you raised some very interesting points. I noted a few which certainly we will revisit during the Q&A. Particularly, I like that idea about multiple earning streams, something that we may have to live with when we can't really monitor what an employee does during the course of a day. So more and more, I guess we may have to shift from monitoring how many hours they clock in to actually what they really produce. I mean, it has to be more output based. So some interesting points which we can discuss as we move on. And particularly the point on office layouts is also something I'm very interested in. So we will have a little further discussion on that as well. For the moment, though, we will continue with the rest of the presentations, and I will now invite Imani to speak on the pros and cons of working from home and also learning and development in the new normal. Over to you, Imani.
Thank you, Manjula, and thank you for the invite to be here today. It's a great opportunity. So yes, so as I think Chintaka set the tone in terms of what this new normal is and what it means to HR and the mindset of us as HR practitioners going forward. And I will be illustrating on working from home, its pros and cons, and how this new normal has impacted learning and development. Just to sort of reiterate what Chintaka also mentioned, is that working from home is not a new phenomenon. It has been there predominantly, as he mentioned, in the West, but also to some extent in some of the organizations that could easily adopt to it. And if you look at it overall from a global context post-COVID, they say 80% of the global workforce or the working population was working from home, and of that 3% exclusively. So that's very much in the West. In Sri Lanka too, many organizations had the option, and although many of us didn't avail it, it was there in some of our policies in terms of having that flexibility. And some sectors like the IT industry, for example, were forerunners of this. So sometimes when there is an urgency or a need, only you adopt to it, just like online grocery shopping, which I think most of us suddenly found the need to do. Even working from home, sometimes even though it was around, we didn't really avail of it. Now, of course, most organizations are considering the sort of opportunities which working from home affords. And because we were forced to go into it, and we realized or we were awakened to the fact that there can be certain benefits and it also can be done. However, I must sort of at this point also bring your focus to the fact that we transitioned into this working from home environment not at a business as usual context. So the way we transitioned or how fast we transitioned sometimes might have had an impact in the fact that operations were not in the scales that it were as usual. So in terms of the positives that we see in working from home, and I know these positives as well as the cons as well are subjective to individuals and organizations as well. So I'm going to touch on it very much in a sort of a general perspective, which would probably be applicable to a majority of listeners and companies out there. So one thing we look at as a positive is in terms of economizing in terms of time, fuel, related expenses, etc. So the commute that you would have usually taken, the time it took towards that, some people would have had a 2-hour commute back and forth. All of that is now is in your bank of time, and you are able to use it or make use of it in a way that will positively impact you. So that is a positive. And then also in terms of saving up, in terms of money as a result of the travel, that the less time that you take to travel and the related expenses as a result of it. It also, through working from home, there has been the additional creation of talent pools that we might not have seen before in terms of certain ways in terms of people we can attract, as well as people, how people can be sort of modeled to sort of add to the productivity of an organization. Um, we also find that as managers and people leading teams, that the focus and the present time in terms of how you apply yourself into work, there is more focus, and there is sort of more efficiency in that sense as a result of it. So some of the sort of misadventures that could have happened, which would color your mood to come into something like a meeting, is minimized to some extent by working from home. So let me just give you one small example of, if you were getting into a meeting and you needed to park your vehicle and get to the meeting, and you didn't find a parking spot, and it made you 5 minutes late for the meeting, it might have sort of got you stressed or anxious. Whereas seamlessly moving in from one team's call to the other, you don't have that anxiety coming in. So things like that, which might have colored some of our daily routines when we came to physically being at a location, is now minimized. We also see more collaboration internally as well as externally. Internally, in terms of our teams sort of collaborate, and each one is able to sort of join in. Sometimes, otherwise, we find that the challenge of physically not being in the same place, etc. We also have the frequency in terms of collaboration, because that has increased as well. Externally, for example, forums such as this, where we actually have the time and capacity and the means through which we can collaborate, which earlier, even though there was the sort of maybe the infrastructure was in place, we didn't really seek that opportunity too much, because we were always caught up with certain other sort of schedules and things that we had to meet. So we see more collaboration. Work-life balance, and here I will touch upon it in cons as well, because it's in that sense a double-edged sword in terms of work-life balance. So we do spend more time with family, self-development, recreation, etc. And to an individual who is able to sort of portion this and sort of keep time to it, you find that in terms of work-life balance, it's a very healthy sort of environment that you can create. In terms of, for an organization also, when you look at it from an HR point and from an organization point, there are certain things that we given the fact that we have operated on a work from a home basis for over 2 months now, the various things that would have added to our costs, like rental workspaces, etc., and how we have how we have looked at the economy of this in terms of related expenses. All of that also are things that we would consider as HR practitioners going forward as well, to look at how, like what Chintaka mentioned, workspaces, the way in which people operate, etc., are reconsidered. Also, in terms of a general sense, the positive impact on the environment, and as a result, how you see a more healthier workforce, a more healthier or a more conducive environment, are all things that relate to the pros of working from home. Then, if we look at in terms of the other side of things, so there's an entire sort of psychosocial element that comes into this whole thing of working from home. All of us who maybe were caught up for a long time in the sort of humdrum of working at office or working on premise for the longest time, and have been wanting to experience working from home, got the opportunity. And now, in hindsight, we see that there are two sides to it. And one thing is that we have to understand that humans are essentially social animals. And this sort of social isolation, and I'm talking about the physical sense of it, because one can argue that you are socially connected through all means of technology, etc. What I mean is the physical sort of interaction is something that humans as beings would essentially need and thrive and need to thrive. So the absence of this has an impact on an individual and in society in general. So that is one of the things that needs to be considered. So in terms of how it colors a company culture, how it impacts a person's identity, and at various stages of their life. So for example, if you're young and you've just started your career, who you want to be associated with, how long you want to sort of spend time in a workplace, all of that is subjective to someone else, for example, who has maybe spent more years of their life at work and now find more contentment in terms of being at home. So things like that do come into play. And recently I read in a study by Gallup, which identified vital friends, which is something that even in an organization, you have certain individuals who you anchor to, who help you to sort of cope and sort of be more productive in your own working environment. So all of that is linked to the social factor. Then in terms of what Chinthaka also mentioned, face-to-face supervision, which still in this region and in certain job roles, for example, or certain industries, is still prevalent. And it's not something that you can just sort of replace with sort of the working from home environment. And also the lack of what we call mutual knowledge. So for example, if I come into work and I say that I met with an accident and my colleagues know that I'm not in a state of mind that I am usually in, they will be mindful of this. So when they will ask me, is everything okay, if, for example, and they will sort of be aware of it. Whereas when you're working from home, that element is absent unless you tell people specifically what happened. So if you are interacting and you seem absent or you don't seem your usual self, someone might just misread it as you being sort of dismissive. So things like that are things that come into play. One of the other things is the added responsibilities considering your status in life. So from the cooking, the caring, and the cleaning, and for some roles more than others, there's all of this which has come into while you work from home. So for example, if you were spending your time at your office and you just had to sort of take care of the things or just over a phone call, etc., to see if things were in order, now you're actually living it as and when you have business functions happening as well, or sort of responsibilities pertaining to a job balanced with what is happening at home. So from childcare to elderly care to any sort of domestic duties that you have. And what's interesting to note here is that they say that the enhanced workload of women is actually the sort of frequency in which it is done is sometimes more taxing than some of the big ticket items that people would have to do, like say if you have to mow the lawn, and which might be done by say the male in the family. It is done less frequently than sort of going behind your child and blowing their nose, or making sure they blow their nose, or making sure that they have eaten. All of that is more frequent, and that enhanced workload is also something that is taxing. The blurring of work and home is also a very important area of concern. In terms of the physical location, where we used to work in a location, finish off at a certain time and come back, then we would leave it behind. And a McKinsey study sort of cited a CEO who said that more than it being working from home, it is actually sleeping in office. And I thought that was very powerful in terms of how you put it, because you actually end up working, sleeping, eating, recreation, all of that in the same working environment. And that also in the current situation can get rather tedious. You wouldn't have anyone calling you while you're sitting in your workstation at home and saying, "Are you still at office?" That sort of thing were things that were done previously, which you don't have now. So that matters. Then the ergonomics of the space that you're in, where you're seated, how it impacts you in terms of your physiology as well, in terms of these were probably furniture that you never thought you would use for an office environment, but now you're compelled to do it. Some of us don't have the luxury of a dedicated space for a work to sort of equip into a work environment, and the concerns as a result of that. So all of these are things that need to be considered in terms of working from home, as well as the infrastructure. And Chintaka also mentioned in terms of connectivity, in terms of the sort of security and things like that. So even something simple like when you were working in your office, if lightning strikes, you're not really bothered. Whereas at home, you may not have this certain sort of remedies that will help in terms of being less mindful of it. Also, in terms of the cost to productivity is also burnout. So when you find that you can be more productive, you can go from one meeting to the other, but that also is not sustainable in the long term, because previously you would have sort of made sure that your schedule was done in a way that you had time for one meeting and then left a buffer of time to get to the other, etc. But now you just move in from one to the other, and your like work schedule is inundated. So those are things that you need to consider. Then in terms of learning and development, so I'll switch on to that area because of the fact that and I think Chintaka also mentioned it, the way we look at development and the way people are being developed is something that is changing and has been changing for some time. But something like this, which is a black swan moment, makes us think that, okay, there are a lot of things that we need to do differently. And one thing I believe is the upskilling, in terms of each individual understanding what it means to sort of meet this new normal and the demands of working from home, etc. What you need to learn, what you need to unlearn, and what you need to relearn in the process, and upskill yourself. So from be it technology, be it a new way of interacting with your teams, be it sort of organizing team huddles, all of this is a learning process. The other thing is, as learning and development and HR practitioners, what we need to understand is habits change and some will stick. So there's a lot of self-awareness that was created at this time. You found that you could engage in a webinar or conduct something on Teams, and it was effective, and that could be done just with minimal tools. So if you got used to doing it, it becomes a habit. So hopefully those habits will stick, and we need to be aware when they do stick, we as HR practitioners need to be able to meet the demands as a result of it, because the expectations are higher. People know how to learn and engage, or are more aware of the tools and equipment. We saw a plethora of information that sort of flooded all of, through social media, through various learning platforms, etc., that people were more collaborative in terms of sharing their information. So now people are more aware. So if you can't meet the demands, there will be someone who will say, I know how to do it, and let me engage in it. So being updated on this is important. And the learning marketplace itself, how it has been democratized. It's a distributed system now where everyone is being able to sort of give solutions and provide answers. And I'm sure all of you who are listening also would have been sort of inundated with what is out there by learning solutions, etc. So there's a lot you can choose from, but you need to be able to curate and understand what meets people's particular areas, and how you need to sort of customize the solutions. But as a marketplace, it has sort of opened up. The learning infrastructure itself, in terms of platforms, things that need to be created, and some of this you might have done at, you might have been getting there, but now it needs to be accelerated. You also need to be flexible and sort of be aware that not everyone will be able to fall in place with it. There could be certain business operations that may not be conducive to e-learning. How do you meet that demand going forward as well? But at the same time, where you can, how do you scale it, and how do you make sure that people sort of subscribe to it, and it's more of a pull rather than a push that you can do in terms of a learning strategy. Increased collaboration, social learning. Chintaka mentioned the sort of bite-sized initiatives, so the micro-learning that you do. It needs to be easily transferable on the job, and that's what, with the going forward, what will need to happen. You will have to have smaller learning initiatives, but which can be practically implemented in a work set environment, and that is what will actually make a difference going forward. So I think those are the areas that I plan to touch on. And Manjula, I think we can move on to Isuru as well, if there's something.
Thanks, Imani. You also raised some very interesting points. I really like that discussion on the work-life balance. I think something we need to talk about a little bit more, probably during the Q&A, because I think the experiences are varied. Because some people have been able to adapt to it very well, but at the same time, I've also heard complaints from people who say that this is much harder than working from office, because from the time I wake up in the morning till I go to sleep, I'm at work, and people sometimes find it difficult to have that break between work and life, and it can be very stressful sometimes if you go on like that every single day, every weekday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 days. You kind of lost track of time, as many of us experienced over the last couple of months. It can cause some burnout also if you don't handle it well. So these are maybe topics we can further revisit during the Q&A time. So let's now bring in Isuru, and he will speak on rethinking employment contracts, remuneration, and rewards. Over to you, Isuru.
Thank you, Manjula. Thanks for inviting me to join this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a very interesting topic that is given to me, because given the context, because a lot of uncertainty has come into the labor market and the concept of employment itself, while the corporates are looking at ways of controlling their fixed costs connected to employment and how to manage the compensation costs, while the employees at large are more worried about the uncertainty, job security, and connected to that, how to sustain their lifestyles. Because whatever that was there in the prevailing would have given them to incur certain long-term expenses or financial commitments. But now in the new normal, if their employment status or their remuneration status are going to be changed or challenged, then it will be a really difficult situation for a lot of people who are employed on fixed income basis. On the other hand, there's another aspect to this, because at the outset, it was very clear that the concept of employment might change as a result of this. But on the other hand, people might appreciate the value of working for a big organization also, because of the security and stability that comes with it. In the gig economy, you have a lot of uncertainty. But in this environment, we saw the people who are associated with big organizations were protected to a great extent, because their financial stability was there for them. So in that context, if you look at employment contract itself, definitely in the future, most organizations will try to control their fixed costs associated with it, and they would look for more short-term or more employment that is more towards casual or task based, while the employees or the potential employees will look for more stability in terms of a fixed employment and fixed remuneration. So there'll be a tussle here between what the organization wants to do and what the employees or potential employees would be looking for. In this context, you have to understand that any change of remuneration has to be, if it is already a permanent employee, has to be with the consent of the employee, because it's a material alteration to the contract of employment. It cannot be arbitrary. And of course, there are EPF, ETF, and other gratuity obligations. The statutory obligations are there. So whatever changes that is done to it has to be done in a legal way, and obviously with the consent of the employee, because it's a contract. And sometimes you will find that there are collective agreements negotiated by unions also there. So in that context, it becomes more complicated, because collective agreements guarantee certain benefits, increments, and sometimes even bonuses. So these things, if the organization cannot afford it for the future, organization will be compelled to renegotiate some of those things, because end of the day, organization has to survive. So that also will be a challenge that in the near future most organizations would face. And then there'll be a trend to reduce the contractual and casual employees as much as possible, because your obligation is to run somehow the fixed the permanent employees. So the contractual and casual employees will face uncertainty as a result of this in the marketplace. That is a possibility. At the same time, some organization might even consider voluntary retirement schemes, because to bring the total compensation cost down, that is one way of doing it, and people amicably solve the issue by accepting the voluntary retirement scheme. So that is also on the cards in the marketplace. I'm sure some organizations will look at it if they have to restructure in the current economic situation. But one thing is very clear: going forward, most organizations will look at the contracts to make it short term, or less on fixed pay, but push more onto the variable pay side, so that the organization can sustain the cost associated with employing a person. Because Sri Lanka, the labor law itself is protective of employment. So therefore, creating new employments, the organization will be, most organizations would be very, very cautious. And then if you look at the remuneration aspect itself, it is which is the foremost thing in the minds of the employee, because they are worried about the sustainability of their living style. There you will always find that the organizations would try to do certain reductions, because of the economic situation that particular organization might face. But on the other hand, however painful it is, the employee also will have to somehow cooperate with this, because end of the day, the survival of the organization is very, very important, because certain things can be postponed or restructured. And if the organization survives and succeeds, then I think those things can be sorted out in the future. So there, in these remuneration matters, there should be a greater cooperation and understanding on both sides, how to do it in a way that that do the least harm to the organization, because retaining your team and motivating your team is also very, very important to come out of a crisis, because when you're facing the crisis, you need your best people, you need your best brains. So you can't create a situation where people lose faith and run away. So you having that in mind, keeping the faith in the organization, or whatever the restructuring has to happen if the business situation demands it. And particularly where as Imani also mentioned this, you can help the employee by restructuring some of the work, because there's a certain amount of cost associated with the employee coming to work. So if you are going through a cut, maybe by adjusting the working environment, maybe taking like work from home, taking off the traveling cost and all that, you can help the employee to weather the storm, because his net cash position would be better than had he been there work all the time, because then the lot of costs associated with traveling, food, clothing, all that comes into play. So the trend would be always to move towards variable compensation rather than fixed compensation, because in remuneration, variable compensation always connected to a result and then achievement of certain results. So rather than having a fixed overhead, most organizations would prefer to a shift, which was happening for some time, but now that shift would be greater. And in terms of rewards and benefits also, I think there'll be more rewards benefits tied to productivity enhancements, particularly things like gain sharing schemes, which will motivate employees to come out and improve the practices, improve the productivity of the organization's ability to compete in the marketplace. And same time, things like sales rewards, incentives, uh, collection rewards, all kind of things can be done so that outcome, the payment is connected to a specific outcome or result, so that organization doesn't feel the burden of it. So there'll be more task-based rewards and remuneration coming in. But benefit aspect itself, I think most organizations would try to control the cost associated with it, because there are huge costs associated with some of these benefits. So they will try to convert some of these things into cash mode, total cash kind of a situation, so that management time spent on managing these benefits and administrating certain connected matters would be saved. And same time, the employee would be given the choice as to how he wants his cash to be utilized, because these are not actually very new things, but Sri Lanka was slow to change. The West, most of these things are there with that kind of the employment practices available in those parts of the world. But Sri Lanka was pretty conservative and continued the old pattern, and most of things have not changed much over the years. So this would be a point. I think some material change can happen because of the economic situation and the compulsion it brings to the very survival of the business as we know it. So in that context, the total topic of compensation, if you look at it, has to be studied very carefully in the context of each organization, because dynamics of different businesses are different. So you have to understand that whatever we do, we have to do in the context of retaining and motivating our best players, because in a crisis, you need your team. You can't dishearten them. So the leaders must focus on that aspect particularly, because leaders will have to display courage. They have to be bold and firm, and sometimes display humility also. And then the second most important thing is to establish clarity or purpose of whatever changes you are going to bring, because that vision would help employees to understand the logic behind it. So the leader has to establish that clarity of purpose, clarity of vision and purpose, why we have to change, and how we are going to change. And same time, the leaders will have to work towards growing the connectedness, the togetherness, and create inspiration. Because that is tough in a way that things are going to happen, because on one hand, you have a dispersed team all over the place. So how to create the connectedness, togetherness, and same time inspire people to stand above the odds and come out strong is a real challenge a leader would face in this particular context. And same time, this is an opportunity to change the organization culture for the leader, so that it will help the change that the organization has to achieve. Because to survive and succeed in this kind of environment, we definitely need attitudinal changes, because it is not business as usual. We are facing a daunting task. Maybe 6 months or 1 year, it will be very difficult, not only for Sri Lanka, for the world over. So in that kind of situation, you have to change. You have to change the way you work. You have to change the way you think, and we have to look at how to protect the organization and take it forward for the future. So in that context, culture is very, very important. So how you drive this culture, how you change the culture to achieve that purpose is another key challenge a leader would face. So in terms of overall, people come to work, one of their major objectives is compensation. Their rewards and remuneration. Of course, there are other purposes also. But in this kind of scenario, that is predominantly in their mind. So the challenge would be how to structure these things in a way that long-term best interest of the organization is protected, and same time the employees also feel that they are stable and secure by being with that organization. So whatever the changes that needs to be done in this area has to be done in a way that you don't lose your good players. Your team has to be protected and motivated. So that's basically what I wanted to say. I would conclude here and open to Manjula to take the discussion forward. Thank you.
There are some organizations where they have a better chance of adapting to this norm, particularly like professional firms. I mentioned a few like accountancy firms, legal firms, investment banks, advertising agencies, and so on. And also maybe corporate head offices of groups. So do you think it's going to be the way people are going to work from now on?
Okay, so just let me take a stab at that. What I feel is that in terms of, yes, certain industries, they would be able to sort of move into or transition into a work from home faster and more sort of seamlessly than others. And like what you mentioned, some of those industries, especially depending on the sort of nature of what they do. If it is a lot in terms of IT related things that don't require manual processing, etc., they will be able to transition more seamlessly. And and also if it is a knowledge worker based operation, that it can be easier. However, I believe that there would be certain sectors that will find it more challenging. And I think one thing that we should consider in this whole work from home sort of phenomena is that we should take a step back and really see how it applies to our sort of businesses and the industries we are in, rather than join the bandwagon just because it's happening. So I don't think it will be a passing phase to think that people will revert exactly to what they were, because of the fact that this was something that was being considered in the business environment for some time, and now more have been awakened to the fact that it can be done. So I feel that there would be more organizations who will look at it and look at it in the long term. But getting about and doing it, we will have to see the marriage between the role and the person and the industry and the fit in that sense. So I feel that it is here to stay, and it is here to stay because it was something that was coming in for some time. So it's not something that just happened as a result of the pandemic.
Anyone else would like to comment on that, Chintaka or Isuru?
Manjula, what I feel is that yes, it will have a definite impact on the way we work. But on the other hand, I feel that we would still continue the old ways also, because yes, that we may not have that 835 mindset to that degree. But on the other hand, running organization, you need to pull together, to be together. So particularly to get the team feeling. So we cannot go to a situation where everyone is working totally virtually. I'm sure maybe 25% of distant work or working from home would come, but at least still the whole model would continue to some 75%, because it's to run organization. I think you need that chemistry. Sometimes you can't get it online. Make sure you have to practically be there together.
Okay. So if you feel that you will sort of need to have a kind of a hybrid situation where some part of the time you work from home and also some part of the time you work at your workplace. So then do you think the design of our workplaces need to change? I mean, if every day we are not going to go there and sit for 8 or 9 hours, can we sort of move into a different setup, like where instead of having assigned cubicles or desks, we can start having what are called hot desks or shared desks, and which people can share, and have more sort of open spaces, probably like hotel lobbies. Because if your main objective of getting people to come to work is to socially interact, right? Then why have cubicles and desks, but let people come into like a large lobby kind of place with coffee machines, etc. And where people can interact with each other socially, and then also you have meeting rooms for the formal meetings. Something quite different. I mean, will that be the office of the future? Can I pose it to Isuru and maybe Chintaka also to comment?
Yeah, it will be Manjula, because it will help us to save costs in terms of rent and a lot of other things, because the current structures are very expensive because it's built on space. But these are not, in a way, these are not new, very new also, because Western world did it for last 20 years in certain companies, or even more. In Sri Lanka, we were slow to adapt to those things. So maybe the economic realities would compel us to rethink how much we are spending on buildings and spaces and all that. I would think that that's a quite a possibility for the future.
And also,
Chintaka, I think coming from a property development company, probably you might have more to say on this.
well, actually, we are not into office property development. It's just the apartments, luxury apartments. But having said that, I think one more thing to add to what you and Isuru both brought was, you will have geographical offices. Like you don't have to probably have everything in one place. So the open offices you can have in strategically located, different geographic locations. So if a person, or rather if we have a remote open workspace where we will have hot desk, and when we have to come for a meeting or to do some work, so it can be probably in Gaur, probably in Kandy, probably in Kurunegala, and different locations, even within Colombo.
Chintaka, I can't hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, so till Chintaka comes on board, let me just add a little bit to what I had in mind for this. Yes, definitely hot desking and flexible work locations will be something that will be very predominant in the future. And also, like what Chintaka I think was illustrating, was the fact that locations, even in the suburbs and Colombo, if you find that people don't have the space and the infrastructure in their homes, you can create sort of central locations where they can sort of congregate and do their work, but get to home faster than they would if they were coming to a central location in the heart of Colombo. So things like that, flexible work or agile work locations, is also something that will be looked at. But at the same time, we have to look at the role, and if it is feasible to have a completely hot desk environment as well. For example, if you are in an HR role and you have to have certain conversations that need to be done privately with people, with individuals, and not have it open out to the sort of open workspace, then there would be a certain area that you would need to sort of allocate your time, or if you have confidential material that you're, but it may be not your own space, but it will be a space that you need to have. So I wouldn't say cubicles will be a thing of the past. It will be there, but probably shared and sort of worked out in a way that will suit the purpose rather than an individual.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting. Chintaka, are you back? Or I think we lost you for a bit. Anyway, let me carry on, because there are some questions that are coming on the chat box. Also, I would like to give an opportunity to the panel to respond to some of them. Now, interestingly, I have two questions which kind of represent two different points of view. So one question asks, there's really a significant productivity loss. What do you suggest we do to bring that up, right? Then the second question is pretty much the opposite of that, which says embrace gig economy and the productivity will be higher so long as one knows how to manage these resources. So can I have some comments, maybe Isuru to start with, and then Imani or Chintaka, on the impact of productivity on this new method of working?
I think it's how the organization is structured. I mean, productivity is fairly subjective. Now, of course, yes, if the factories are not running or the certain offices are not functioning, we lost productivity. But on the other hand, when we go back to work, the question is that how we improve the productivity has to be looked at specific to that particular organization, because end of the day, what you want to achieve is get much more out from the time and effort you are putting into that particular work. So definitely things like time we spent on travel and all that, as we discussed earlier, if we can move the offices or factories more close to the population centers and make it easier for people to be involved, that would be, I think, definitely yes. But in terms of improvement of productivity is concerned, there's no choice, because we have to remain competitive, not only at a local level, at global level as well. So the downturn of the economy globally would intensify the competition. Competition is going to get intensified actually, because there will be lesser amount of business and lesser amount of opportunities. There will be large number of businesses competing for this. So at least in the short term, the competition will get intensified. By improving productivity and by improving the way we work, definitely that will give us a competitive advantage versus another country or another competitor.
Thanks. Anyone likes to add to that?
Yeah, so definitely from what Isuru said, it's definitely in terms of productivity need to be looked at in different angles. But I think right now, what we also have to be mindful of is that it isn't business as usual. We are going through a global pandemic, and the way people are adopting to it, or sort of adjusting and adapting their lifestyles, also may have a result in the way they are productive. So we can't really sort of measure based on what is happening now, but we can take into consideration the new sort of work trends and see how we can use it to benefit people to be more productive. So sometimes an industry can be hit at this time in a way that cripples it completely. And as a result of it, productivity is sort of compromised. Whereas others will find that they need to be, the environment has been created for them to be more productive as a result of working from home, because this is always what would have worked for that type of industry. So I think since it's not business as usual, we need to be mindful of that also going forward. But then look at in terms of how we can adapt, sort of make sure that we use some of the learnings from this to take forward.
Okay, thanks. Actually, another one big opportunity or a plus factor I see from this shift towards working from home is that companies can gain access to a much larger pool of people who didn't participate in the workforce previously during what we may call the pre-COVID era. For instance, mothers with young children who may have quit work simply because they could not handle their family responsibilities while working. Then persons with certain physical disabilities, elder people who have already retired, and maybe people who are living overseas who will still be in a position to contribute if they can work remotely. Do you think companies will see this opportunity and will try to tap this new pool of talent which is becoming available with this new way of working? Is Chintaka there? Have we lost him? Okay, maybe I'll ask Imani to make a start.
Yeah, so I think definitely we will open up to different various diverse talent pools that we might not have been able to sort of attract previously. This could be, as like you mentioned, people who have other commitments that have prevented them from getting back to the workforce or getting into the workforce at the start itself, and having sort of experienced it in a sort of trial form at this point, they know that it can be done. But however, one needs to be mindful that when you are immersed in this, there are also those responsibilities that they would need to sort of be engaged in, like childcare, etc. And companies need to be flexible towards making sure that they understand this and meet. So sometimes the working hours and the way they sort of the regular working hours may change. So that you accommodate the fact that they would need to pick up a child from school, and during that time they would need to be they would be unreachable. So things like that also would need to be considered. There would be certain sort of startup mentality in terms of some other sort of talent that we might have not been able to tap into before, who will sort of collaborate and work with us and complement the industries we are in. So yes, I definitely feel that it would be something that will be seen going forward, this new talent pools building up. And I think Chintaka is with us now. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, these are some of the challenges of working from home. So I think our digital infrastructure has to develop a lot if we are to kind of make this our primary medium of working and also carrying out training and development programs to everything else. So there are some, I think, hurdles to overcome on the infrastructure side. I wonder whether you heard my last question to which Imani was responding.
No, I did not hear. I'm sorry. That was a live demonstration of what can go wrong with technology at times.
Okay, right.
But
So very briefly, if I put it back, it will give me a moment. I'll just sort of update Chintaka on that. So what I raised was that I mean, we have a big opportunity now to rope in a lot of people who are shut out from the workforce earlier because of the new way of working. Like I just gave a few examples, like mothers with young children, who may have quit work previously, persons with physical disabilities, elder people who have recently retired, and even people who are living overseas but who may still like to work for a Sri Lankan company. Can we tap these kinds of talent, Chintaka?
Absolutely, I think that's a very important point. And in fact, this was looked at one point, when especially when the call center concept came, where I was also part of that initial setup of HSBC HDPL, and where we looked at and seriously looked at these mothers who are actually qualified and who can work, but because of their young children, they need to be at home. That's an area that you can tap into, and then the seniors as well, because if you see some of the seniors, even though they have passed their retirement age, but they still want to work. Places like Malaysia and other countries, their retirement age is 55, 60 plus. So yes, these are some of the areas that we can really look at, because I saw one participant who had mentioned economy is the way forward, and even the baby boomers, they don't want to be retired, so they want to be part of that. So there are lots of areas, differently able people who can contribute. That's why. And there was another question asking the difference between the gig and the consultancy. Gig is very small size deliverables it can be. So for which there can be many categories of employees that you can look at, or different segments in the society where people can come in, like the mothers, like the senior citizens, like the differently able people. So yes, most certainly that's a big area that we can explore, where we can create this big gig economy.
Thanks, Chintagadi. Isuru also wanted to add something. Isuru?
Yes, Manjula, I wanted to add this. Actually, companies will be more receptive to this angle, definitely. But you have to understand that there are certain things that have to get clear, particularly this in the area of law, employment law. There are certain impediments to this because current legal framework is pretty archaic to accommodate this kind of modern working patterns. And there are even things like EPF, ETF, all this creativity, all these things, whether they are applicable to this kind of people, because all this becomes additional cost to companies. So whether you just go as a consultant, but if the person has been there for a long time, whether that person will claim employment status, there are a lot of uncertainties in the area of law, and it's stacked against the employer at the moment. So this kind of creating this kind of employment opportunities need certain relaxations in some of these things, so that employers will not be scared about additional unseen costs.
Yes.
Yeah, just to add to that,
yes, Chintagadi. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think Isuru is very right. And in my presentation, there's one point, in terms of what we need to change, of course, is the local labor law, which has to happen where very rightly, Isuru mentioned, these are the things that we need to accommodate. So we have to look at it's not only as far as gig or any other employment type, but we need to look at in totality, especially including how do we adjust and realign our labor laws to accommodate this.
I think this kind of leads to a couple of questions that were posted in the chat box, which I think are very specific to Isuru's area. So I will put them to you, but already I think you have answered to some extent. One is, what are the legal aspects of work from home employment contracts in Sri Lanka? What are the legal aspects of work from home employment contracts? And will it be possible to change the current letter of employment, which is already issued to people, to specifically say that they can operate from home? So these are a couple of questions that came up.
Actually, current employment contracts, although it envisage that people will be working at a particular permanent location assigned by the employer, there's no specific impediment in terms of allowing work from home, because it's a contractual employment, and the employer can decide where the work can be performed. So it can be employees' home as well, as long as it is acceptable to the employer and employees in agreement as well. Yeah, because other things about normal organizational rules about attendance and all that can be changed according to the need of the situation. So contractor employment in that sense is flexible. Can be maybe sometimes you need a small change, but not a thing that will stand in the way of working from home. But the more critical thing should be how to evaluate performance, how to measure the person's output. Do we have the technology for it? Because end of the day, contractual employment leads to those questions eventually. Because it's currently structured to cater to a situation where person is available in a specific number of hours in a particular location, those things are not being catered to. So in that sense, the letters may be needing a certain amendment, but there's no impediment. I mean, you can do that as long as both parties agree for this thing. And if there's a union involved, of course, then the unions also will have to agree.
Okay. Aren't the working hours sort of built into some of these employment contracts, and will that have a issue?
Some cases, yes, but some cases it doesn't specify. It comes through other bylaws of the organization, not the contract itself. The organization has other rules and procedures. That is what the appointment letter doesn't specify. Organizational rules only specify. So the rules can be changed as long as the parties agree that this is how we are going to work. There's no issue. But the critical issue is how to monitor work, how to evaluate work, and how to reward based on those work.
Thanks. I hear you're bringing us to a very, very important topic, which I had noted as something we needed to discuss on performance management. Can I put that to Imani to comment on, like, how do you think we can both monitor and measure performance in this new working from home environment? I mean, can we manage with the existing tools that we have, or do we need to create some new tools to fit in with the new kind of work environment?
Thanks, Manju. So I think one of the things that we really need to consider is that in terms of tools, it needs to be because now things like the sort of objectives and how sort of measurable they were, that sort of smart objectives will be non-negotiable now. You will have to make sure that each objective or KPI meets that requirement so that they're measurable. So if and also in things like the FaceTime and continuous feedback that needs to be done. We have to enable systems. We have to have systems that enable this. So, for example, the sort of performance management system, if it is in a way that people have access to it. So, for example, we had within John Keells, we had just moved into a new HRIS system, which enabled us to be able to take this on a little more sort of proactively. So like that, it really definitely needs to be looked at in terms of systems, because what you might have had before, if it is not going to meet this requirement, especially for performance management, you need to make sure that you invest on that infrastructure and you don't sort of delay on it, because that needs to be put into place, because people also need to acclimatize towards that. So something like continuous feedback is a process that we are still working on, because people might just tell someone over a conversation that what they did was great, but actually documenting it and putting it down on the system takes some effort. But we need to get people moving on that, and that is if we are especially looking into more agile working sort of roles and conditions, then people need to sort of incorporate this as part of their daily routine. So I feel measurable goals, smart objectives, continuous feedback, and the systems through which this can be enabled is pivotal. One thing we also need to consider at the same time is how accessible it will be to various levels of employees, because sometimes you find people who have the infrastructure as a result of their role, things like laptops and devices that they can sort of channel this feedback through, but some others will not. So how will you sort of make sure that the necessary infrastructure is in place, and what sort of process needs to be done towards that? And maybe looking at some sort of team related sort of objectives as opposed to individual. All of that would need to be considered, and systems need to be enabled. So I think definitely it needs to be relooked at in terms of.
Can I just add to that, Manjula? Because
yes, thanks. Yeah.
Going forward, I think performance management system is going to be it's a living document, or else it's a live dashboard, because people will just monitor, what have you got to do, and have I done that, do I have time to complete that. So it's unlike those days, it was just a biannual or every quarterly document that a manager and the employee fill. This is going to be a live dashboard where employees will monitor, and it's a living document that if it's not digital, it's a living document where people will be given the KPIs and just constantly checking your performance. And especially going forward with the new normal, it's going to be a live dashboard that people will have.
Thanks, Chintaka. So we'll just have one more final round of questions, and this round I would request for say one member of the panel to answer each question so that we can cover as many as possible. So these are all questions coming from the participants. So first one is, what are the new methods or ways of continuing employee engagement activities in this post-COVID era? Who would like to have a go at that? On continuing employee engagement activities in the post-COVID era.
Let me take a stab at that, Manjula. So I think in terms of post-COVID, if we are assuming that things will continue to some extent like this, where it's working from home, then we would need to look at engagement that caters to those people who are working from home, as well as some people who will be working on premise. So you will have a hybrid of, so it's not like where you can have one event and expect everyone to be in that gathering. So things like live streaming, things that sort of make sure that everyone is connected but in different ways is something that we will have to look at. If we are looking at people who, in terms of engagement, in terms of various sort of levels, age groups and types of people, you would have to have sort of pocket these engagement activities so that you can sort of make sure that each one is feeling a connection, and also bring it out to individuals to sort of engage with each other. So the type of activities would need to sort of be looked at in terms of from your previous calendar of activities, what you were, if you had one big sort of event, an annual sort of get together, how will this be replaced? And in a way that people will not feel that they were disconnected. There's still engagement, but at different sort of frequencies. So so I think post this era won't really sort of be a thing of the past, because there will be things in it that will continue, and we need to be mindful of, when we are having engagement activities also, that we are meeting the various different types of employees that we are engaged with. So I think that's something that will have to be looked at. Manjula, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, there's another couple of questions. We'll very quickly deal with them before we close up. So maybe either Isuru or Chintan can go at one of these. So first one is, how can we motivate adoption of IT in our role among our workforce when we work virtually?
Okay, I'll take it. I think this is something that there's no choice. I think we have to really do that, because working from home has to be supported by IT, definitely. Even even traveling to different locations can be minimized, even among the office now. Some organizations have several offices. So you use more effective video conferencing facilities like this, then it will be minimized. I think even performance appraisals, as Chintaka mentioned, now the new software is mostly giving real-time feedback to employee. New HRIS systems are capable of doing that as to how he or she is performing against the KPIs. So I think investment in IT will have to increase, and definitely it will be. Since the new generation coming into the organizations are quite savvy with it, I don't see a major problem in it. It's just that we have to change our systems to be able to cope with that change and make it accessible. Because some of course, some, like now I'm working for a bank, so we have a lot of security concerns. So how we open up our systems to work from home and other things have serious challenges. But subject to those security concerns, I think we need to adapt to that kind of environment pretty fast.
I agree, and I also feel that our service providers also have to adapt, isn't it? I mean, like they have to now start offering work from home packages.
Yeah,
Because a lot of us are using, I mean, what was typically offered for home use, and that's why we keep on running out of data every now and again, and we have to buy an extra 10 GB or whatever. But that should not be the case. I think now they must also come up with, maybe because people actually now use more data, less voice, and then come up with specially designed packages. I hope if there's anyone listening from any of our telcos and the service providers, they will also make a note of this kind of need that is arising out of the different model of working. So definitely, but they are a little bit slow, I feel, in responding. Right. So, okay, let's pose one final question to Chintaka. And with that, we will conclude because we have already overrun our time by about 15 minutes. So, Chintaka, this is an interesting question actually to end the discussion, a very kind of broad question. Somebody is asking, what will be more important, specialization or all-round knowledge?
Well, future is going to be multi-skill. You will require certain specializations, but if you take IT, then you have certain limitations, where your specialization is. But future managers will have to be multi-skilled. So IT also, or else let me not just only stick to IT, but whatever the areas, you need to be multi-skilled to be part of a project. So specialization will be used for certain activities, but in general, your other skills, in terms of future, is most about finding problems, finding solutions. Systems can do that in time to come. That's what it is. That is what is going to do. So that soft skills, you need to just be trained, and you need to have that mind, I would say, open mind, to be part of a team where you will play different roles. So I would say in general, you will, yes, require certain specializations for your area of work, but when it comes to a team, you should be multi-skilled.
Thanks, Chintaka. There's one more question that has come, but I will myself respond to that very briefly in the interest of time. The question is, what are the restrictions on paying remuneration to the employees while the situation? So, I mean, basically, there has been a new tripartite agreement between the government, the Employers Federation of Ceylon, representing the employers, and the trade unions. All the leading trade unions are in it. So, under this agreement, it has been agreed that some level of pay reduction may be possible, where it's not for cases where people are working from home, but where some people in certain types of industries actually cannot work at all. So if your factory is not functioning, or if your hotel is closed down and people are at home and maybe they are working in shifts, in such a situation, there is an agreement to proportionately reduce the pay according to the number of hours worked. So if you are working, say, 50% of the time, then your pay can be 50%, but subject to a certain minimum, right? So all these things are available. I think you can, if you are a member of the EFC, they will advise. Even otherwise, I'm sure you can find out the details. So I will not go into a lot of detail on that. Wish that question came a little bit earlier. Maybe we could have spent a bit more time. So at this point in time, I think I would like to thank the panel who have contributed immensely to make this discussion very interesting and fruitful. I think we explored a lot of interesting aspects of the new normal, how it applies to the challenges as well as opportunities that arise from this somewhat new experience that we had during the crisis, but which, as most of you agreed, is likely to stay. Perhaps I think there was a shade of difference in that. I think Isuru felt it will be less, Imani felt it's a bit more, Chintaka probably in between. And but nevertheless, to some degree or the other, this is going to be there to stay. And also it will depend also on the type of organization and the type of work you do. It will affect some people more, some people less. But nevertheless, it's not going to be 100% what it used to be pre-COVID. I think on that note, let me thank the panel again, as well as the Sunday Times Business Club, who supported us as a co-host of the event, my team at the Ceylon Chamber for doing all the necessary arrangements, and for the participants for joining in, and for the interesting questions, some excellent questions, most of which I picked up during the course of the Q&A. So thank you very much, and we'll meet again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.